Good morning. Happy brunch with Bree. It's an unusual brunch with Bree when I haven't had breakfast or lunch yet. Usually I have brunch right before this live segment, which is why I call it brunch with Bree. That and I love food. So I really would love to talk about my near-death experience today. I know you've probably seen some posts. You probably get bits and pieces of it here and there. Maybe you've gone to my website where I keep all of my interviews that I've been a guest on other people's podcasts. I think I'm somewhere between 25 and 30 podcast now. Most of them are video, but the ones that are just audio, I have not put on my site yet, just because they're on so many different platforms. It's not easily, embedded. So I figured I would love to come on and share about this experience, why I do what I do, what got me here, and especially because I'm going to the IONS conference next week. And I am so honored to be a guest on two panels. One will be a family panel, which I get to be on with my mom and my sister, and we get to share the family dynamics that started kind of before the near-death experience and what's transpired afterwards. And how that came about was a psychotherapist saw me on one of the panels last year, and my mom and sister were in the room, super, super supportive, as they've been my whole life. And because of that, he wanted us to do a panel together about family relationships and dynamics and how to help everybody in this, hard transition period. It's hard for everybody. So we get to do that on Saturday. I think it's next Saturday. It's coming up quick. It's so exciting. And then I was also asked back for the distressing near-death experience panel. And I get to be on that with a gentleman I met pretty soon after I left corporate America. I volunteered for IONS to help with their website, and he's in charge of that. And he's the moderator on this panel. And another lady I like to call my friend. We've kind of supported each other through this distressing experience panel and sharing group. And this sharing group happens every second Thursday of the month in the evening, and it's free to join. So if you've had a distressing experience, whether that's a near death or something similar, out of body, astral traveling, entities, darkness, whatever, you are more than welcome. Even if you haven't had this experience and you're just curious, you are welcome to join. You can find that on IONS events, groups and events. And they've got tons of free sharing groups. So if it's not the distressing one, there's cross-cultural, there's cross-religious, there's just open sharing. There's so many wonderful sharing groups that happen every month. You can attend virtually for free. It is so amazing. And I also get to be on a panel with a gentleman that came to the discussion group last year and was in the crowd and just had so many questions. And we ended up connecting and speaking one-on-one after the panel. And he got invited to share on the panel this year too. So everyone, I am so excited. I know everybody on these panels this year, and it is so dear to my heart and so exciting that I figured it's about time I get on and share about my near-death experience on Facebook Live. You've seen posts about it. You may have seen interviews about it, but just having this, I come on live every week, so why not share about my near-death experience before I share with the world at IONS once again? And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer. I love a more conversational style interview. I know this isn't an interview, it's just me talking, but we can definitely have a conversation if you have any questions. So now that I've covered how excited I am for this IONS event, where, it's the International Association for Near-Death Studies, if I did not cover that, now I'll get into the background, the story, what led me here, what got me to be a death doula, why I'm so passionate about helping people on a spiritual and illness and end of life level. It started when I started developing symptoms of my own chronic illness. I was only 10, and a lot of things happened when I was 10. Our family moved, and I went from having a dozen friends just on my street alone to having one friend within, I think, 8 blocks of my house in a small town. I went from having a pretty good friend group in school to not having any friends in school. And that was pretty traumatic. Also 10, I'm not sure about boys, but I know girls, it's prepubescent and things start changing hormonally. So that was also difficult. And then I start getting weird symptoms, and they weren't too bad at first. They were muscle, like my forearms and my calves would just ache and cramp. And my family thought, maybe it was growing pains and I'd be tall like my dad. For those of you who know me, no, that didn't happen. I am not tall like my dad. And Tara is my sister. Thank you for commenting. She's excited to speak at IANS with me this year. She went to not only my first IANS conference, but my second, and this is our third. And she's speaking at it. My mom's second. She's speaking at it. It's so exciting. And getting back to when I was 10, I had this weird arm flutter, and it kind of just jerked and fluttered kind of weird. And I had long hair, and I played with my hair to kind of play it off, but it was involuntary and it was kind of weird, but nothing too severe. Around that time, I'm not sure what age exactly, but I started developing insomnia. I wouldn't fall asleep till 3, 4, 5 in the morning and be up at 6 for school. And I refused to tell my parents because I was positive they'd, just get mad or not understand or, force me to lay in bed or something. I don't know. But I didn't share with anyone that I couldn't sleep. And in the next couple of years, probably within the next year, there was a lot going on. Huge move, these weird symptoms starting, insomnia. Around this time, I started seeing ghosts in our basement. And they were pretty harmless. They didn't really bug me. They didn't pay much attention to me. And it was just kind of interesting phenomenon. It wasn't scary or anything. But soon after that, I started seeing darker entities, these things that brought fear along with it. And they weren't ghosts, they were more shadows and apparitions and kind of, more fearful things. And a pretty big one that was commonly saw in my basement, and I'll explain what that means in a second, but it was the shadow that went across the walls, and it had a top hat and a cape. And I'd only seen it in the basement, but not only did I see it, but when I did invite friends over, specifically the one time I very vividly remember is we had this entertainment center with our TV, and below the TV had glass doors, so it was kind of reflective. And I had probably 10 girls over from my church for a slumber party, and half of us saw this thing in the reflection, and we'd look back and see it, and we're freaking out. The other girls think we're all just playing a joke, but I really freaked out the ones who saw it. And then I knew I wasn't the only one. Unbeknownst to me at this time, my sister and her friends were also seeing this thing. And we'd report it to my mom, but not each other. And we wouldn't find out for, I don't even know how long afterwards, that we had both seen this thing at the same time. Another really scary thing that scared me to my core was when I saw this generational doll that we had in our house, probably my great-grandmother's. It probably lost its eyes 50, 70 years ago. I think they were just painted on or button, I don't know, little marble. I'm not even sure. All I do remember is one night this doll, its eyes glowed red, and it turned and looked at me, and it freaked me out to my core. I later found out that a well-respected gentleman at our church had also a very similar situation with a doll that turned and looked at him in his home, and he moved his family out within the week. Our family did not move us out within the week. I kind of wish they would have, but that didn't happen. It was very, very scary. So I'm experiencing, some weird symptoms, hitting puberty, no friends, insomnia, paranormal stuff, and just kind of like, what is going on? I was starting to get pretty depressed, and I'm not sure if I was anxious at the time, but just really depressed. And I think I was anxious because the girls at school were awful. The boys were awful. There were so many rumors and gossips, and I somehow got caught in the middle of it all the time. And it was just really, really hard. As I get into my early teenage years, about 14, 15, both my arms are now twitching, my legs are twitching. I start developing a lot of muscle rigidity in not only my arms and legs, but in my back and my neck. And I start developing nerve pain, and I called them shivers because it looked like I was just shivering. I could be in 100 degrees and I wasn't cold, but it looked like I was just freezing to death. So people would try to throw blankets on me. I'm like, no, I'm not cold. So we didn't know if it was a food reaction that would set these off for about 20 minutes. And things just got so weird, we finally started seeing a doctor. And the first doctor, I'm not sure about the first, but one of the first doctors that was he was so close. He put myoclonic episodes in my chart with dystonic behavior. I don't even remember. It's in my book, Wired to be Dysfunctional. It's the actual notes that we kept that we kind of tossed out of our mind because what happened with him. But researching this for the book my mom and I co-authored about my illness, we found that he was on the right track had he not been incompetent, basically. So we see him. He has a pretty strong idea of what's going on, but no diagnosis. And he wants to put me on a benzo at 15 years old. And luckily, I didn't know what a benzo was. And my mom had medical background. And she's like, well, hold on. Before we put a 15-year-old on a benzodiazepine, we don't have a diagnosis. Can we explore more options first? And so that was our visit. And when we went to make another appointment from his office, just walking down the hall to the front desk to make another appointment, they said, oh, he's leaving practice and his partner is not taking over. So my mom was livid. She was so mad that this doctor was willing to put a 15-year-old on a benzodiazepine without a diagnosis and no follow-up care was planned at all. And what I didn't know is benzos are extremely addictive and they can have huge repercussions down the road, much like alcohol. So the only two drugs at the time that withdrawals could kill you was alcohol and benzos. And I didn't know any of this, a 15-year-old, but looking back, I'm so grateful my mom did. So that leads us on a journey of another 3 years of misdiagnoses, mistreatment. Doctors that didn't have a clue would say it's psychosomatic. It was a conversion disorder, which forced my mom to come clean about something that happened to me as a child that I didn't know about, but it sure explained the nightmares I started getting when I hit puberty, which I was just, that was another cog in the machine that I was like, what is going on in my body, in my mind? And so I went to some therapy for that, and it didn't help the condition at all. The condition kept getting worse and worse and worse. There's so much history of this kind of doctor care throughout your life, and really the families. Yeah, we've had pretty bad doctors for a really long time. Luckily, by the time I get to where I am now, that does change, and I start to get great medical teams. But back then, it's just a huge struggle, and of course, I'm depressed and I'm anxious, and I get misdiagnosed as bipolar, and because we're just trying to figure out what the heck is going on with me. And so after being drugged up for bipolar, which I didn't have, I was comatose, or catatonic, I think, not comatose, catatonic for 4 months. And we sought a second opinion. When I say we, that was my mom. I was catatonic. I didn't care about anything at all at this point. And I saw another doctor. He said that she's absolutely not bipolar. Let's get her off the meds. And I resumed a semi-functional mental state and physical state, other than the other condition progressing. Well, we get to 18 and I finally get a diagnosis, myoclonus dystonia, with a diagnosis you would think would come hope. Oh my gosh, they know what's going on. They can help me. Finally an answer. As I was relieved that we got a diagnosis, and relieved that it wasn't just in my head. It wasn't a conversion disorder. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't due to some trauma that I had, my subconscious had buried. I was relieved. However, we had already tried all the medications they would try for this disorder because they were treating symptoms, and that's all they could do. Most of it is, I think, 50% is genetic, and there's some genetic mutations and some other things that, they weren't quite sure of the causality, so they just treated the symptoms. Pamela, benzo, alcohol, and pain pills in a system. That alone. Those are really, really heavy duty medications. And the benzo and alcohol, those withdrawals, if he was a long-term user, could cause, death with withdrawing. Pain pills, it sounds like he was definitely really hurting. And I'm very sorry for that. I've had benzos in the past. I've never, been on long-term. I have been on alcohol long-term, and I will get to that. Pain pills, luckily, never worked for me. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten addicted to that too. So I think my situation could definitely have gone down the route of your son. And I'm very sorry for your loss. And, hopefully by coming on here, we can help other people prevent or mitigate or change those directions. So at 18, they tried almost everything. There was only 2 things left: alcohol and experimental brain surgery. This condition is also known as alcohol responsive myoclonus dystonia, and it's because alcohol takes care of the symptoms. So at 18, my doctor said, I'm not putting you through this experimental brain surgery. Let's try alcohol. We know it's been beneficial. It helps. And at the time, they didn't really know why. But it's the same reason that benzos were also prescribed. It's because myoclonus dystonia is a very overactive brain, which is why I had anxiety and OCD and some other things. The benzos and alcohol slow the craziness on the myoclonic dystonic brain down a lot. And I didn't know this until I found a neurologist at 29, so I didn't know any of this. It's just like, oh, okay, let's try alcohol. Oh, alcohol works. Oh, I'm 18 and I just got a green light to drink. So I didn't know the reasons why. I just knew it worked, and it worked great. It let me live a semi-normal life for a while. But at 29, I asked my neurologist why, and he said the myoclonus dystonia brain constantly looks like it's in a seizure. And that's why you look like you are flopping around. I'm twitching a bunch. Your muscles are all dystonic and distorted because you've got too much going on. You've got OCD, you've got anxiety, you've got insomnia because your brain is so overactive that the alcohol and benzos slow those processes down. And that's kind of the same that happens with PTSD and trauma and a bunch of other reasons people self-medicate is because it slows those functions down. It's a depressant. And then coming off of that, the reason it's deadly is because your brain is so used to being slowed down that when you come off too quickly, it speeds up so much, it throws your brain into chaos, causing grand mal seizures and tons of imbalances, could throw off your heart arrhythmias as well. So very, very dangerous. But I had a solution for a little while. And when I was young, I was positive that I was going to die before I reached the age of 28. I just had this gut instinct that I was going to die before I reached 28. And I thought it was the myoclonus dystonia was going to kill me. I never thought I'd live long enough to see the effects of long-term alcohol use. And so I just tried to use it as a medicine to get through my life, but it kept needing more and more and more, and to take care of the symptoms. And as I drank more to take care of the symptoms, the more I needed to live a normal baseline life, because then alcohol withdrawals would set in. I'd get shaky, I'd get sick. A lot like, I think, I'm not sure about opiate addiction, but I've heard you get really sick on that too, which is why a lot of people stay hooked, because they cannot deal with the sick. Or, you have to deal with the mental stuff of when you come off of substances too. And a lot of people don't have enough support for the mental things they have to deal with either. So anyways, I tried my best to live my best life, and I bought my first house at 19, and I set into flipping it. It was a foreclosure. It was pretty run down. It was I think not quite 100 years old at that time. And I was going to flip it. I went to college and, just did my best. Worked as a waitress. I interned for a construction company, did the things that I thought normal people would do. And I hid my illness as best as I could from everyone I could. So we get to 24-ish, 25-ish, and I sell my house, make a really good profit. My symptoms are almost, they're pretty unbearable, and my alcohol consumption is really high at this point. So I try several times to figure out how to live life without alcohol. I'd go several periods of time without it. And I would the myoclonus dystonia would become really unbearable. So of course I'd usually go back to drinking, but I decided, I was so ill and so hopeless at this time that I was going to move away to die. I sold my home with a profit. I moved 1,600 miles away so I could die alone, basically. But I wanted to die happy, as happy as I could be. And I got a beautiful luxury apartment, 2-bed, 2-bath, overseeing a pool, overseeing the hillside of North San Antonio, Texas. And I spent my days either at the pool or exploring towns or New Braunfels or Austin, caves. I did my best at living the best rest of my life possible. I was just positive I was going to die there. I didn't know how. And I was going to some, what do you call them? AA. So I really didn't want to die drinking. So I maintained a few months of sobriety here and there. And when I was actually in one of my periods of sobriety when I had my NDE, which is actually kind of crazy to me. But I was in, I think, probably 2 months, maybe 3 months of sobriety at this point. And my mom, who was always my wingman, always my advocate, never gave up. She was always searching for an answer. And when I was young, it was conventional medicine, holistic, alternative. We tried pharmaceuticals, we tried Reiki, chiropractor, acupuncture, massage, meditation. But at the time, I only knew of mindfulness meditation. It was semi-beneficial. Hypnosis. I think we've done a ton of holistic, alternative, spiritual types. And none of them, except for pharmaceuticals, had any side effects, negative. Pharmaceuticals, the whole back of the book my mom and I wrote are full, the 10 pages of all the medicine they tried me on, all the side effects, including alcohol. We've got the whole pharmaceutical definition of alcohol and its side effects if you want to check that out. But I was at this point, because of my history of seeing these entities and ghosts and apparitions, we found out that somebody had played, well, one of the young girls had played with an Ouija board in the house before we moved in, opened a portal. We found that out, and my mom had read about spirit attachments. And these spiritual attachments, they could be dark entities, they could be disembodied humans, or basically trapped souls. Some people even think they could be extraterrestrial or alien types, but they can attach to a person. And she had read stories about people who had these weird, incurable illnesses that were just very bizarre, which mine fit in. And so she was like, would you give it a shot? And I said, absolutely, I'd give it a shot. At this point, I'm still willing to try anything for relief. And nothing had been detrimental so far. So I get on a Zoom call or a Skype call at this time. It's 2017, and talked with this gal about this release therapy and how it's going to go. And it's going to all be done remote. I don't have to be involved, but she warned me I could get a little sick and, like flu-like symptoms. I was unaware of why, okay, whatever. I might get a tummy ache. Okay, cool. I get that all the time. Anyway, she starts, and turns out there are some pretty nasty things attached, and I get very sick. So, mind you, I have myoclonus dystonia, which is, painful and exhausting every day, almost all day, every day. That's tremoring, it's twitching, it's cramping, it's nerve pain, it's exhausting, anxiety, of course, OCD, mentally exhausting, physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting. And then I'm also still an insomniac. And at this point, I am not sleeping 2 to 3 days at a time. And I mean 0 hours of sleep, not just a little sleep here and there, like 10, 15-minute cat naps. I mean 0 hours of sleep. So I am an insomniac. I've got myoclonus dystonia. And now I'm coming down with this flu. It's a spiritual flu or energy flu. But it's very physical. I start throwing up. I start being married to the bathroom, can't, keep food down. And I refuse to go to the doctor because what am I going to say? I'm doing some spirit release therapy and I'm getting really sick. Yeah, I've already been called crazy. I'm not going back to the doctor. So I am physically very ill at this point. Then these things are pissed off and they've been attached a long time. So then I start getting, they start planting stuff in my psyche. And, it's very fearful. It's like the nightmares I had, but in real life and in waking state. And it was very scary. And I realized they're feeding off my fear. I said, oh, okay, no, I'm not going to be fearful of you anymore. And then they become physical. So now I am just being attacked on, I feel like, all levels: spiritual, emotional, mental, physical. My mom and dad realized that I was in some trouble and they booked a flight to come see me, I think on the 27th or 28th of April that year. And my mom's on the phone with me almost 24/7, and we're in prayer, we're in, just kind of things to try. We don't know what we're doing. We're just trying to get relief and for everything to stop. And at 2 a.m, I realized I couldn't do it. And I told my mom I was going to hang up so I could get some sleep. I said that because I know she wouldn't be able to try to even sleep if I didn't say I was. And she'd been up with me this whole time too. So, the sprinklers just came on, and I'm getting to the good part. So let me move because I know it can be pretty noisy. My apologies. A little intermission right before the good part. Okay. So anyways, we are really really tired. And at 2 a.m, I hang up the phone and I say I'm done. I can no longer do this. And I meant that with everything. So I call out with my soul. Yeah, well, and our sprinklers have been down because our pump's been down for like a good week probably. Thank goodness we've got rain, but we just got it back yesterday, and so I think the schedules are a little off. So my apologies. But anyways, I call out from my soul. I mean, I call out with everything. I don't even know if I believe in, I don't even know what kind of God I believe in, if I believe in God, because I called out, from a emotional part when I was a teenager. I begged for help and I got no answers. But this time was very different. This time, everything, my whole essence called out for help. And I said, I can't do this anymore. It's in your hands. And I meant that from my soul, my heart, my brain, my everything, my body. And in that moment, everything felt silent and peaceful and serene. These entities felt like they had been ripped off of me. And I was in no pain. There was no anxiety. And it was just really beautifully peaceful. And I feel tapping on the palms of my hands and my feet, and I hear this big booming voice, "Are you ready?" I didn't hesitate to say yes. I didn't even ponder what I was ready for. I just knew something had answered my call, my cry for help. So I shouted yes from that same place I'd given up in. And in that moment, I felt 3 hard pounds on my chest and my heart stopped. And I was completely detached from my body. I ended up in this black, velvety darkness. Like it was all dark. I had no body. I was just a soul, just an energetic soul. And there was there was so much energy in this place. It was everything was there. And the creator that I had called out to, or God or source or whatever you want to label it, it was there. And I felt nothing but pure love and acceptance. And I knew I was home. And I didn't remember this thing called a human or earth, but my consciousness knew something drastic had shifted. And I don't know why it went to, am I dead? But I had this thought, am I dead? And out of the darkness, 3 monks appear. And they're just kind of grinning and laughing at me. And it would take me years to figure out why. And I'll get to that a little later. But I just thought, okay, that's curious. And they disappeared back into the darkness, and I end up in a tunnel. And this tunnel is this vivid, bright blue. It's so bright, it's almost white. And in it, or around it, is ones and zeros. And I'm going through at supersonic speed. And I know my soul's being downloaded with information. I'm not sure what kind or what it is. I just know it's, information that will come to me later. And I end up in a white space. There's no rooms or doors or floors or anything, but behind me, I feel the presence of an ascended master teacher. And due to my religious upbringing, I, believe him to be Jesus, but, I don't know who he would have felt like had it been a different upbringing. And in front of me is this pile of numbers, black numbers, and I grab them and throw them up in the air with childlike enthusiasm and say, "No wonder you love creating," because I realized then the universe was created in math. And I'm going to do a little plug in that space right there. During this experience, I learned that this reality is more of a simulation, or other people call it a video game, a game simulation, whatever you want to call it, Matrix. And I'm going to be on a panel with two of my good friends on this theory sometime later this year or early next year. So stay tuned for that if you're curious about how this reality is actually created. Anyways, then I go from that place to another place. But before that, Pamela, what did your mom do exactly? You said your mom did that too. I'm very curious to see what she did. So I end up in this space with other beings, and still not familiar of humanity or Earth, but this place I would say would be kind of reminiscent of Earth. It had buildings. Oh, did your mom have a near-death experience and tell you about a tunnel as well, Pamela? I would love to talk more. Awesome. So it's got, buildings and grocery store and utility poles. And at this point in my experience, I see these beings sliding down trees. Oh, I would love to talk to you, Pamela, about her story. That sounds awesome. I love hearing other near-death experiences stories, and I love getting the word out there about them. Not that, she hasn't shared hers or anything, but I'd love to learn more. So I see these beings sliding down these trees, and it's covered in snow, and I don't think I like snow. And just like that, the trees turn to green, and I'm sliding down the trees. Another pause because she came back, Pamela's mom came back with complete healing and saw your son. Okay, Pamela, we definitely need to talk because when did that happen? Has that been recent? Because that sounds absolutely amazing and healing for you as well, possibly. I know you've had a lot of questions about your son, so please let me know more. Yeah, I'll send you a message after this live. But in this space, a lot happened, and there's different interviews I do where I go into much more detail about it. It's quite extensive. I felt like I was there for months, so I won't go into all that detail today. But what I learned in this space was we are all connected. Thoughts create our reality, and in this space, it happened instantly. And thankfully, we have time to change our thoughts here on Earth. So if you have a negative thought, you have the blessing of time to change it and redirect it, reroute it. There, it was instantaneous. So at one point, I thought, oh, there's a flame. I wonder if I go underneath it, will I melt? Instantly, I was there and I was melted. But there was no pain, there was no fear, none of that. So it didn't matter that it happened instantly. Here, it matters quite a lot. So I like to say that we are blessed with the gift of time, even though it is very frustrating sometimes, a lot of times. Another thing that happened was I was trying to learn to fly, and I severed my arm on a utility pole. Once again, no fear, no pain, just curious. And I watched it grow back with binary code. So that code came back a few times in my experience. At one point, the beings started to go through an opening through a fence, and I just knew I wasn't allowed to go. I didn't know why or anything. I kind of watched and observed them leaving, and I knew they were going on to like something greater. And I end up in the last place of my experience, and there's this 7 magnificent beings behind me. I'm still not sure who they are. There's been some theories from other people who've heard my story, but nothing has like, oh, that's for sure them. Not as significant or powerful as the creator I met in the blackness, but more so than the master ascended teacher that I met in the white space. So somewhere in between there. And there's a scroll in front of me, and it's beautiful golden sparkly script, and it's just, I don't know, the answers of the universe, the knowledge of all, my purpose. Who knows? I wish I did, but my ego came back at that moment and just decided to remember that I was once a human and said, you're showing this to a human. And just like that, the script went away. It was erased from my memory, and scroll rolled up, and I was popped back in my body. And that is definitely the Cliff Note version of my experience, at least in the part with all the beings, because that felt like it went on for months. So if you want to know more of that, I have written a book about my full experience with way more detail about that place I experienced specifically with other beings. And then also the book has more about some of the paranormal and metaphysical things I experienced that led up to it, as well as some of the trauma and difficulty and PTSD I had after the experience. I really thought I had been dead for 2 months. I didn't know what happened, but my consciousness just knew something had happened. And when I came back to my body, I felt the restart of my heart, and I'll never forget that feeling. And just the sheer, it was desire to get back there. And I tried slow breathing, I tried meditating, I tried begging again, and I couldn't. And then I was scared to open my eyes because I was positive I was going to be like half decayed or I didn't know what to expect. I thought I was going to be in a casket under 6 feet of dirt at this point. I had no idea what to expect because I had felt like I'd been gone from this realm for so long. And when I opened my eyes and finally saw I was in the same space and it was still dark, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's a few days. But it had been 8 minutes, and that blew my mind. And I'll share some things that also happened in the next coming days. Is I felt like I had been stuffed into a sausage casing, and I realized it's because I was this expansive, energetic being in this tiny, dense human body. I also was really freaked out of walls and floors and really hard, dense things, because once again, everything was very fluid and energy. And here, what matter is the slowest form of energy. So I'm way up here, vibrating very, very high, very quickly, very fluid. And then we slow everything down to get to matter. And it really freaked me out. I could also feel people's pain. I came back as a medical intuitive, and that also freaked me out. If I drove past a car accident, I could feel where other people hurt. If they had, seatbelt burn or whiplash or broke something or passed away, I could feel all of that. It was very intense and very overwhelming. And it took me 5 or 6 years to realize that the monks were laughing at me, because when I asked if I was dead, there is no such thing as being dead. There is no such thing as death. And to ask if I was a thing that didn't exist was hilarious to them. So that took me a while to understand why they're laughing at me. But that's why I tout myself as a death doula, because you know me at all on a personal level, I am pretty sarcastic and love puns, love play on words, love to play with ideas of things, and to be a death doula to help you transition from this life to the next phase, to transition your soul from here to there. It's not actually death. And I think that is just, I try really hard to get rid of or lessen this fear of the word death and dying, because it doesn't exist. It's just a transition. So I love putting myself out as a death doula, even though some people are pretty intimidated by that word still. But because I'm young and I think I've got a relatively, good sense of humor, I take nothing too seriously or personally. I think I'm the best, or one of the best people to represent death and dying. So that's one reason I am a death doula. When I got back, I craved being so close to that side again. I started volunteering for hospice and helping people get to that side, because I knew I could hold an authentic joy for them for passing. Not the passing part, that's often traumatic. It's hard. It could be painful for some. It could take a long time for some, quickly for others. But I could hold authentic energy and joy for where they're going. And I didn't have to say anything. I actually volunteered for 2 years in the memory ward, where the people couldn't even speak. So I just held that energy for them, and it was so incredible. And when I left corporate America and I found a thing called a death doula, I was like, oh, I can do that and more. I not just active dying, but I can help people through grief. And I myself have gone through grief because with my chronic illness, I grieved the loss of my childhood, the young adult years, loss of jobs because of my illness, just grief on so many different levels. And then I grieved leaving the afterlife. I didn't get a choice, but I had grief of not being there, and I wanted to be there so bad after coming back. So grief more than just people who have transitioned. But of course, that as well, I helped with grief a lot, especially in dementia and the memory ward. Their families usually grieve them twice. Once because they lose the person they once knew, and then twice when their actual body, dies and their soul transitions. So I'm dealing with grief on that level as well. And then, participating in bereavement and all sorts of stuff. So I feel like I'm more of a grief specialist than anything, because some people just focus on the grief of the loss of a loved one. And I focus on grief of the loss of anything and everything. So that really got me started in this journey. And after I did get the experimental brain surgery finally after, I was 30. So after 12 years of being told it was available for me, I finally was able to receive it. And after that, decided to actually heal my poor brain. I tried to go too hard, too fast, because that's all I'd ever known. And when I gave up corporate America, I was like, what do I do now? And they said, well, stop feeding your ego and start feeding your soul. Okay, how do I do that? By writing books. I hated reading when I was young, hated it. So I thought that was super ironic. So I wrote my first book and came out of the NDE closet. And that book is White Flame. And it really details all the paranormal, metaphysical things that led to my near-death experience. Then, not too long after that, my mom and I co-authored Wired to be Dysfunctional. And that's really heavily medically based, more for the advocates and patients of chronic illness and caregivers, and especially mom-child, journey. Beautiful. I think it's a beautifully written book, a lot of medical information in there. And then I did my first ever meditation retreat when I learned that there was more than one way to meditate, that there was more than mindfulness meditation. And there was this transcendental meditation that you could actually get out of your body. And when I had done that, I entered the black space of my near-death experience, where everything was possible, because it's the start of everything. It's all energy, all possibilities, everything. But it's also nowhere, no time, nothing, no one, nobody. And in that, when I was in that space, my tunnel came back to me and started going through my head and my heart and rewired my brain. And I have been cured of myoclonus dystonia after 22 years because of this meditation experience and being able to get back to the beyond the veil, the place of all possibilities. So I'm very passionate about helping other people reach that and birthing into their spiritual, authentic selves. And so kind of between the chronic illness, facing my own mortality as a child, my near-death experience where I've actually faced death and dying and the afterlife, all of that, and my passion for helping others and understanding the unity and the oneness that we all really are is really what led me to becoming a death and spiritual doula and an author. That definitely was not in the books for me, but I've now written 4 books. The 4th one, I was requested by one of my death doula clients to write his story. He had a spiritual awakening that happened over the course of almost 3 decades. That included rebirths, past life regression, dreams, and a near-death experience in his own, in experiencing angels, some very amazing things. He was an aerospace and software engineer that was kind of forced into the spiritual awakening. So that book is also available. It's Awakening the True Self, Alan Jones' Spiritual Odyssey. And that was written as a legacy project for the spiritual community for one of my death doula clients. And I'm honored to have been able to do that for him and the spiritual community, because my story has, I keep getting told that it doesn't sound like others, but it provides a lot of people hope, and especially if they have experiences that are kind of not well talked about in the near-death community yet. He really wanted me to write his because his also isn't quite talked about, and his is a little different than most of your typical ones, where you have a life review, or you have family members come meet you, or you're at the pearly gates of heaven, or you're in the despairs of hell, or all of these things. So all those books are available, if you're interested. And of course, if you are interested in working with me, I would absolutely love to work with you. I do currently have let me back up a little bit. I thought after healing from my first chronic illness, I would be done, I've reached enlightenment and healthy body Bree. And I've come to understand that I have another chronic illness, and I've been dealing with that, and, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, this past year, specifically since probably February, is when it started really tanking me and really causing a lot of fatigue. So my business has suffered a little bit, and just trying to figure out, I've only been in business a couple years, and trying to figure out how to best help people, and in what capacity, and how to do that, and all the things. But my business has taken a hit, and I would love to be able to keep supporting people in the way I can. And so I do have a fundraiser going on right now. I'm sure the link has probably popped up, and if it's not on screen right now, if you want to donate to the cause, I would super appreciate it. Not just me, but also the people I serve. And if by some miracle I reach my goal, I intend on using some of that to provide scholarships to people who need me that can't afford my services. But right now, I appreciate everyone who has already donated and who might donate now or in the future. Just I'm very passionate about it. It's very soulful, and I think the world needs help in this way. And I've been told the world needs help in this way, so I would love to keep supporting people. And we'll just kind of see what time brings. But my services will never, I don't think, will ever disappear. It just might slow down a little bit from what I can offer and when I can offer things. Should I not survive the next couple months. So if you're called to that, I would appreciate it. And you can share it as well, or heck, just you don't even have to donate money. Just send me good healing vibes. I am definitely using my resources to heal this condition. Oh, thanks, Pamela. I think so too. So hopefully, I won't go away. That's for sure. I don't know at what capacity I'll be able to stay and provide all the free resources that I do. So hopefully I'm just trusting that the universe will step in, and everything says this is my calling and what I should do. And it fills my soul with such gratitude and honor that I couldn't imagine not doing this. But I do intend, now that I know what I am facing with this new illness, not only have I gotten on some pharmaceuticals, which I usually, try to avoid, but this one has had no side effects and has actually really, really helped. So between that and knowing that I can heal myself, we can all heal ourselves. We all have that divinity within us and that power and the ability to heal from illness, grief, loss, tons of different afflictions. And I've seen it. I've got client testimonials at the wazoo, and then I can point you to thousands of others of testimonials of people healing themselves from anything from emotional, mental, and physical, spiritual ailments. I mean, across the board, there are thousands of testimonials, and there's no one right way to do it. There are so many beautiful ways to do it. So I'm definitely taking this time to work on healing this as well, and I believe it's very possible. I've just had a little kink in the hose, a cog in the machine, a little slowdown in the what seems like eternal time. So I'm working on that as well in the back end, and I just really wanted to share my near-death story. And if you have any questions that you didn't ask on here, feel free to message me. I, love communicating and helping other people out. If you're going to be at the IONS conference next week, so excited. Hopefully we can catch up and meet if we've never met in person, or if we have, love to reconnect. I'm just so excited to be able to share my story internationally again and really touch lives. A lot of amazing things came out of the conference last year, and I can't wait to see what this year does, and especially having amazing panels with my family on one and my friends on another in a beautiful space. I am just beyond grateful to be invited back as a speaker, and I'm honored to be able to share my story. And hopefully this hour, I usually don't go on live for an hour, but that's to really tell a good chunk of the story from beginning to where I am now. It takes about an hour. I can definitely cut it down. I've cut it down to 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I've gone as long as an hour and a half sometimes too. But I'll let you figure out how you want any more information or ask me any questions. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you for all your comments. And Pamela, I can't wait to talk to you more about your mom's experience. And I'm not sure if I'll be on next week or not because of traveling. That might be true for the next 2 weeks. If there's something you would love answered live, I can make it happen. But if not, I will see you when I see you, and it might be right before the conference or right after, or maybe a week after. So we will talk to you soon.